I grew up in a small, snowy town in northern Minnesota, where winters always felt like something out of a postcard. Christmas Eve was usually quiet, just me, my mom, and our old golden retriever, Max. My dad passed when I was 10, and ever since, Mom liked keeping the holidays simple. That year, I was 21 and home from college for the first time in months. Snow was falling heavy outside, the kind that muffles every sound. Around 10:30 p.m., Mom went to bed after watching her favorite old Christmas movie. I decided to stay up, scrolling my phone on the couch, half watching some random horror videos on YouTube. The tree lights were the only thing glowing in the living room, red, green, and gold flickers bouncing off the window. I remember thinking how peaceful it felt. But peace never lasts long in stories like this. Around 11:15, I heard crunching outside. At first, I thought it was just snow sliding off the roof. But then it happened again, closer this time, deliberate. Max lifted his head from the rug, ears twitching. His low growl echoed faintly. "Probably a deer," I whispered. He didn't believe me. The crunching turned into slow, heavy footsteps. Someone was walking through the yard. I turned off my phone flashlight, suddenly aware of how exposed I was, sitting by the big front window where the tree stood. Then came the first knock. 3 dull thuds on the front door. Not frantic, just steady, like whoever was out there wasn't in a hurry. I froze. Mom was asleep upstairs. The digital clock glowed 11:22 p.m. Who the hell knocks that late on Christmas Eve? Max growled again, deep and low. I whispered, "Shh," and tiptoed to the door. The porch light was off, but through the frosted glass window I could make out a dark shape. Tall, still, just standing there. After a few seconds of silence, the person spoke. A man's voice, muffled but clear. "Hey, sorry to bother you. I think I hit a deer down the road. My phone's dead. Could I use yours?" Every rational part of me said no, but his tone wasn't threatening, just tired, polite. I hesitated and asked through the door, "Where exactly?" He took a breath. "A few miles up. Black pickup truck. I just need to call for a tow." It was freezing outside. My gut twisted. Something about his voice felt off. Flat, like he was repeating words he'd practiced. I said, "Hold on," and went to grab my phone charger. But halfway across the room, I glanced back at the door. The shadow had moved. Now it was pressed against the glass, just enough that I could make out part of his face. Or what I thought was his face. Pale, half hidden under a hood, smiling. That smile didn't match the voice I'd heard. I whispered, "Mom." But she was asleep upstairs. Then came another knock, louder. "Hello?" he said again, sharper this time. I backed away slowly, heart hammering. Max started barking uncontrollably. I grabbed his collar and pulled him toward the stairs. Then the man spoke again, but his voice wasn't by the door anymore. It was near the window. "You got a nice tree in there." I froze mid-step. My stomach dropped. He was outside the living room window now, maybe 10 feet away. I didn't look. I just yanked Max and ran upstairs. I woke Mom, whisper shouting, "There's someone outside!" She jumped up, confused, and grabbed her phone to call 911. From the upstairs hall window, I peered down, and my blood ran cold. There were 2 sets of footprints in the snow now, one leading from the road, another circling the house. The dispatcher told us to stay upstairs and lock the door. She said a unit was 5 minutes away. Those were the longest 5 minutes of my life. We huddled in Mom's room, lights off, listening. Then, faintly, the sound of our back door handle turning, metal twisting, then rattling. Once, twice. Max growled like I'd never heard before. Then, silence. For nearly a minute, we heard nothing. No footsteps, no wind, just the faint ticking of the clock in the hall. Then came a slow creak, the sound of the basement door opening. That door had been locked. Mom clutched my hand. I could hear the faint vibration of footsteps on the basement stairs. Heavy, deliberate, coming up. I whispered into her phone, "He's in the house. The dispatcher told us to stay hidden. The officers were almost there. Then came 3 heavy knocks on Mom's bedroom door. Not the front door, not downstairs. Our door. "Ma'am, it's the police." I froze. That was too fast. The police couldn't be here yet. It had barely been 3 minutes. Mom whispered, "Don't open it." Then, silence again. Not even footsteps walking away. Just stillness. Outside, faint blue lights flickered through the curtains. Real police lights. The dispatcher confirmed officers were on scene. We opened the window and shouted for them. Within seconds, 2 deputies were inside, clearing the house. But the man was gone. The back door was cracked open. Fresh footprints led out into the woods behind our yard. They followed them a few hundred feet until they vanished near tire tracks on the old service road. They found a black pickup later that night, abandoned about 2 miles away, engine still warm. Inside, they found an axe, rope, and a stained cloth in the passenger seat. The officer said, "You're lucky you didn't open the door." We changed all the locks, added cameras, alarms, everything. But every Christmas Eve since then, when the snow falls heavy and the house gets quiet, I still find myself listening, waiting for that slow crunch of footsteps in the snow. Because the thing that haunts me most isn't what happened that night, it's that the second set of footprints never led back to the road. They just stopped, right outside my bedroom window. If you've ever had a real experience like this, something that still gives you chills when you think about it, send it to me. You can email your true story and maybe I'll feature it in a future video. It was Christmas night 2020. I was driving home from my girlfriend's house just outside of Duluth, Minnesota. We'd opened presents with her family, ate too much, and I left a little after 11 p.m. because I had work early the next morning. It was one of those bone-cold nights where your breath fogs the windshield and the air feels heavy. The route home was mostly back roads, 25 miles of nothing but forest and snow. No streetlights, no houses, just my headlights carving through the dark. The first hour was peaceful. Christmas songs on low volume, the heater humming, snow falling lightly. Around 11:45, I passed a small gas station that was dark and closed, the last sign of life before another 15 miles of emptiness. 10 minutes later, I noticed something odd, a faint flicker of light in the distance on the side of the road. As I got closer, I realized it was a car pulled into the ditch, hazard lights blinking through the falling snow. At first, I thought about stopping. It was Christmas after all. But then I remembered my dad's words. Never stop on the highway at night, no matter what. Still, I couldn't shake the guilt, so I slowed down. When I pulled closer, I could see the car better. An older silver sedan, door slightly open, steam rising from the hood. I rolled down my window a few inches and called out, "Hey, you okay?" No answer. I grabbed my flashlight from the glove box and stepped out. The cold hit me instantly, biting, dry, silent. The snow around the car was disturbed, like someone had been walking in circles, but there were no fresh tracks leading away, just deep, messy prints that disappeared behind the vehicle. I leaned in. "Hello?" Still nothing. That's when I saw the keys dangling in the ignition and the driver's door wide open. It looked like whoever was there had left in a hurry. I took a few cautious steps toward the back, shining my flashlight. That's when I saw it. A single boot print leading toward the tree line. Then another, then a full trail disappearing into the woods. And next to the last print, a small dark stain in the snow. Something about it made my stomach drop. I turned back toward my car, debating whether to call 911, when I noticed something I hadn't before. On the rear window of the stranded car, written in the frost, were the words, "Help me." The letters looked smudged, like they'd been written with trembling hands. I took a shaky breath, got back in my car, and locked the doors. I pulled out my phone. No service. Figures. I decided I'd drive a few miles until I got a signal, But as soon as I shifted into drive, my headlights illuminated something in my rearview mirror. Someone was standing at the edge of the woods, too far to see details, just a dark shape against the white snow. They weren't moving. I froze, hand on the gear shift. Then they took one slow step forward. That was enough for me. I floored it. The tires spun, then caught traction, spraying snow behind me. I didn't look back again until I was at least a mile down the road. About 15 minutes later, I pulled into that same dark station I'd passed earlier. It was still closed, but I parked under the awning and waited. I sat there in silence, trying to calm my breathing. I kept replaying what I saw: the open door, the message, the figure in the woods. Then I noticed something. There was a shape in the reflection of my side mirror, a silhouette, faint, barely visible behind the fogged glass of my back window. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, the kind of thing you see when you're overtired. I leaned forward, squinting. The shape moved. My blood ran cold. Someone was sitting in the back seat. I didn't think. I just threw open the door and jumped out into the snow, leaving the car running. I ran toward the road, waving my arms like a maniac, hoping a passing car would see me. But there were no cars, just silence. Then I heard it, the soft click of my car door closing. I turned back. My headlights were still on, engine still running. But I could see the faint shadow of a head in the driver's seat now. Whoever it was, they'd climbed up front. I started yelling, "Get out of my car!" No response. The driver's door slowly opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, wearing a heavy coat, hood up. I couldn't see his face, but he stood perfectly still, head slightly tilted, like he was studying me. I took a step back. "I called the cops," I shouted. "They're on their way." That made him laugh, a low, raspy laugh that sounded more like a cough. Then he started walking toward me. I bolted. I sprinted across the snowy lot, slipping and sliding until I reached the side of the building. I crouched behind a propane tank, trying not to breathe. The sound of his boots crunching through the snow got closer. Slow, steady, deliberate. Then, silence. For a few seconds I thought maybe he'd left. But when I peeked around the tank, I saw him standing next to my car, just staring in my direction. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled something out. Even from that distance, I saw the blade glint in the light. I clamped a hand over my mouth. My phone had no service again. Then, headlights appeared down the road. A sheriff's cruiser. The man looked up, then bolted into the woods behind the gas station. The deputies found me a minute later, shaking so hard I could barely talk. I explained everything, pointing toward the trees. They searched the area but found nothing. No footprints past a certain point, no sign of anyone. When they checked my car, the back seat was soaked, not with snow, but with something dark. They said it was likely from whatever had happened near the abandoned sedan, but that's not what scared me most. One of the deputies came back holding a small piece of paper they'd found tucked into my visor. It was wet, but still readable. It said, "Thanks for the ride." The next morning, they confirmed the stranded car belonged to a man named Harold Quinn, missing since Christmas Eve 2019. His car had been stolen that night, never recovered. Until now. They never found the person I saw. No fingerprints, no tracks beyond the tree line. Nothing. But here's the part that still keeps me up at night. A few days after, I went to the car wash to get rid of the smell. When I opened the back seat to vacuum, I found something wedged between the cushions, a small wooden cross tied with red ribbon, like the kind people hang on Christmas trees. Carved into the back in shaky letters were two words, "See you." Last December, 3 of my friends and I decided to rent a cabin for Christmas weekend. We were all college seniors, burned out and needing a break before graduation. The plan was simple: snow, movies, drinks, and no Wi-Fi. The cabin we found was in the middle of northern Wisconsin, about a 2-hour drive from civilization. The pictures looked perfect. Big windows, wood stove, cozy lights. It sat right by a frozen lake, surrounded by thick pine forest. We arrived on December 23rd, just before dark. The air was sharp and cold, the kind that turns every breath into fog. The place was smaller than the photos made it seem, but still nice. There was one main room, 2 bedrooms, and a narrow hallway that led to a small basement. The owner, a quiet older guy named Bill, handed us the keys and gave a few warnings before leaving. "Don't wander off the trails after sunset," he said. "Things get confusing out here." We laughed it off. That first night was peaceful. We built a fire, played cards, and stayed up talking until nearly 2 a.m. Sometime after that, I remember hearing faint tapping outside. I figured it was just branches in the wind. The next morning, I noticed something strange. Outside the back door, there were footprints in the snow, small, like a child's, barefoot. They started at the tree line and ended right at our door. "Probably an animal," my friend Tyler said, but they weren't paw prints. They were human. We brushed it off and went on with the day, made breakfast, hiked, took photos. But that evening, things started feeling wrong. At sunset, the wind picked up hard. The power flickered once, then died completely. We figured it was a blown line somewhere in the storm. We had flashlights, so it wasn't a big deal. Around 9 p.m., we were sitting around the fire when something hit the window. Hard. A single, solid thud. We all jumped. Tyler grabbed a flashlight and pointed it toward the glass. Nothing but swirling snow. He opened the door and stepped outside, yelling, "Who's there?" No response, just the sound of wind through the trees. We went out together, checking the snow for tracks. That's when we saw them again, bare footprints leading from the woods toward the cabin. But this time, they didn't end at the door. They went around the side of the house. We followed them, our lights cutting through the snow. The prints circled the cabin twice, and then stopped right beneath the living room window. There were small handprints smeared on the glass. No one said a word. We rushed back inside, locked every door, and piled wood into the fire. The temperature was dropping fast. By midnight, everyone was asleep except me. I was sitting by the fire, scrolling through old photos on my phone when I heard something faint, like whispering. It came from outside. At first I thought it was the wind again, but then I heard it more clearly. A soft, rhythmic whisper. 2 voices, a man and a woman. They weren't saying words I could understand, just murmuring. I turned off my flashlight, trying to listen. The whispering grew louder, then stopped suddenly, replaced by the slow crunch of snow. Footsteps, coming closer. I shook Tyler awake. He listened for a second, eyes wide, then grabbed a poker from the fireplace. "Stay here," he whispered, and started toward the door. Before he reached it, something knocked. 3 slow, heavy knocks. Not panicked, not random, just deliberate. We froze. Then, from the back of the cabin, another knock, this one sharper. They were on both doors. I whispered, "What do we do?" Tyler motioned for silence. The knocks stopped. We waited. Nothing. Finally, we heard footsteps moving away into the snow. We stayed up the rest of the night, waiting for morning. When daylight finally broke, we opened the door. The wind had erased most of the prints, but one thing was still there. A small wooden ornament hanging from the door handle. A crude little figure, carved to look like a person. No face, no features, just arms and legs made from sticks. On the back, someone had etched, "We watch." Tyler wanted to leave immediately, but the storm had buried the road in snow. We were stuck until it cleared. That night, we tried to keep spirits up, watched downloaded movies, played cards again. Around 11 p.m., the fire started to die, so I went to get more logs from the woodpile outside. When I opened the door, I saw something that made my stomach twist. Every tree between the cabin and the woods had a wooden figure hanging from it, dozens of them, each one identical to the ornament on our door. They swayed in the wind, creaking softly, like they were watching. I backed inside, locked the door, and told the others. None of them believed me until they saw it themselves. We decided to push furniture against the doors and windows. The plan was to stay up together until sunrise. At 2:30 a.m., the power came back. Relief washed over us, until we realized the lights were already on before the power returned. Someone had flipped every switch in the cabin. Then we heard footsteps upstairs. Tyler grabbed a flashlight and whispered, "No one went up there." The sound was slow, steady, one step at a time. We could hear it above the ceiling, moving toward the stairs. I whispered, "The ladder to the attic was open earlier." The footsteps stopped. Then a hand appeared on the edge of the stairwell, small, pale, with dirt under the nails. Tyler rushed forward and slammed the attic door shut. We shoved a chair under the handle. Silence. For a full minute, we heard nothing. Then the faintest scraping sound came from the walls, like something moving inside them. We packed our bags right then. No one slept. By dawn, we dug out the road with our hands and left. When we reached the main highway, we called the owner to tell him what happened. He sounded calm, too calm. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "You must have stayed in the wrong cabin." We told him that was impossible. We had the address he gave us. He paused for a moment and said, "The one by the frozen lake?" "Yeah," I said. He exhaled slowly. "That property's been empty for years. The family that owned it disappeared one Christmas night. No one's lived there since." We tried to explain, but he hung up. A week later, I went back with the sheriff's office to show them the place. But when we got there was nothing. Just an old, burned-out foundation surrounded by trees. No cabin, no trail, nothing but snow and silence, and hanging from one of the trees, a single wooden ornament. On the back, carved into the wood, "Welcome back." If you've ever experienced something truly terrifying like this, especially during the holidays, send your story in. You might just hear it featured in my next video.